Anyone that knows me knows that I'm quite the complainer. I'll often talk about what a terrible day I had at school just because of a bad class that I had last. Or maybe I'll talk about how bad the food at a wedding was when caterers spent hours preparing the one dish that I liked. We all know people like this, and if you don't, you're probably one of those people. The question is, though, what do you want to say when they go on their endless tirades on how terrible life is? Usually it's something along the lines of, you don't have it off that bad, stop complaining, always look on the bright side of life, think about the positive. Think about the positive. In this talk, I'm going to be explaining why this mindset is actually harmful to our society and our moral fabric. This mindset of think about the positive, or as I'm going to call it, a fallacy, comes from a moral philosophy. And this moral philosophy, I'm pretty sure everybody knows about, optimism. Again, everybody knows what this is. It's looking at the glass as half full and not as half empty. Not as half empty is very important, because otherwise, what's even the point? It's looking at a piece of burnt toast and saying, well, at least I got toast, eat the toast. And it's carrying your towels home from the pool, even though the rest of your family doesn't seem to be helping out too much, because there are other children doing manual labor just to survive. And you might be asking, why are you trying to ruin my worldview like this? Like, I'm perfectly happy being an optimist. It's made my life better in such and such way. Here's the thing. Toast, still burnt. Towels, still on my 4-year-old back, confused about my obligations. What I'm trying to say is our emotions are still there, despite repressing them. And even when they don't reflect a reality of some kind, they do reflect a view of our reality that needs to be addressed in some way. So, in a society in which we value individual expression so much, why is our problems an exception to the rule? That's because our problem with optimism lies much deeper than optimism. Our problem with complaining lies much deeper than with optimism. It lies in hedonism. When I say hedonism, this might make you uncomfortable. It might make you reviling it or gross. It's because you're probably thinking of egoistic hedonism. It's the hedonism that is the moral code that says, only your happiness is the most important happiness, and everybody else's happiness, meh, don't care. Just make yourself as happy as you can right now. And this is pretty antithetical to what we live as today. What you probably live by is some form of ethical hedonism, in which we want to prioritize everyone's happiness, equal to, or if not more, than our own. Hedonism directly supports optimism, because if you want to be happy, and you want other people to be happy, you probably want to focus on the positive and not the negative, because focusing on the positive makes you happy. Focusing on the negative makes you upset. That's just the way it is. Hedonism also rejects complaining. This is for 3 reasons. The first reason is that when people complain, you hear their issues, you empathize with them. You feel a little bit of their pain. This makes you uncomfortable. Pain should be eliminated. The second reason is because when I hear people complain, it reminds me of my own problems that I've experienced, or the problems of my loved ones, or someone that I care about. And this also makes me uncomfortable. I don't like thinking about these things. Discomfort, pain, eliminated. The third reason why is because when I hear somebody talk about their problems, especially if it's an institutional issue, then I feel a responsibility to fix that problem. I feel like I need to fix their problem, and that makes me uncomfortable because it gives me a feeling of responsibility. A feeling I have an extra obligation, I have to think about this more, I have to do more of this, and that makes you uncomfortable. And that should be eliminated. But here's the thing. A moral system that rejects complaining is not a viable moral system. It's not what we should be living by. Let me explain with something that I said earlier in the talk. Always look on the bright side of life. Many of you might recognize this quote. It's from The Life of Brian. It's from Monty Python. And the way that it's said is really interesting and telling about the way that optimism works. It said to Brian, who's being crucified, literally being tortured to death, by another man who's next to him. He's being crucified. He's literally being tortured to death. And Brian is saying, oh no, I'm being tortured to death for a crime that I didn't commit, and everyone is, killing me, and what am I going to do? And then this guy next to him, he goes, some things in life are bad. They can make you pretty mad. But always look on the bright side of life. So what he's doing here is he's shutting Brian down from complaining, because by complaining, he's thinking about his problems. He's making himself unhappy, and he's making him unhappy. He's feeling pain, and he's spreading pain. This is antithetical to hedonism. But to complain here is to accept reality. To think about this is to accept what's really happening to him. And so to not complain, to not accept it, is to reject reality, which leads us to a really uncomfortable truth. Optimism denies reality. This is an issue because in order to solve a problem, we need to first recognize the problem. We need to see the problem. Then we need to accept the problem. To accept the problem is to cause us some discomfort. Discomfort doesn't make us comfortable, by definition. It needs to be eliminated. But what happens? What happens when we go on from here? When we reject the ideals of hedonism, we reject the ideals of optimism, then we can find solutions. So, in a way, to be a moral human being, to solve problems in the world, to make the world better, we need to be uncomfortable. And not only that, we need to spread that discomfort to other people. Isn't that weird? Isn't that so antithetical to the moral system we've been working with for our entire lives? A couple of counter-arguments I want to dismantle before continuing. The first one, well, being happy now isn't as important as being happy later. We're going to be happier later, so of course we should prioritize being happier later, right? First of all, when you say that, you're implying to me that the ends always justify the means, that spreading unhappiness is fine as long as you're going to be happier later. But the idea that the ends justify the means is a really flawed idea that I'm not going to get into, but you can probably figure out on your own. It's not a great system. The second reason why is because the world always needs improving. The world always needs to get better. And for that, we always need to think about the world's problems. And we always need to talk to other people about the world's problems. And to talk about the world's problems, we need to feel uncomfortable. And we need to make other people feel uncomfortable. That's, again, antithetical to hedonism. And it totally destroys this narrative of feeling happier later to feel happy now, because even later we'll still be unhappy. Even later we'll still be spreading discomfort. We'll still be spreading unhappiness. Second thing that I want to dismantle, this idea that humans exclusively seek pleasure and avoid pain, that's human nature, we should just deal with it. That's an interesting point. You're probably thinking it right now. And the reason why you're thinking it is because it was really popularized by thinkers like John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, and Sigmund Freud. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, by the way, were very popular hedonists. They really revolutionized the system of utilitarianism, which we live by today. It's maximizing pleasure for the greatest amount of people and the greatest amount of pleasure. But I'm not going to go into that right now. What I'm going to go into is why that assumption isn't really proven by empirical science. So there's a study by Ralph and Maureen Erber that took two groups of people. One group of people were watching Robin Williams. Robin Williams, comedic genius. You're probably going to feel happier after watching him. The second group watched Sophie's Choice. I'm pretty sure everyone here is going to understand why watching Sophie's Choice is going to make you upset. It's literally a Holocaust movie. I don't think many more things than that is going to make you that upset. And after this, they assigned these two groups to both do math problems, right? And math is an emotionally neutral activity. Math isn't going to hurt you, it's not going to help you, it's just math. You're writing things down on a piece of paper and you're calculating. There's no reason to feel happy or sad, right? And the results to see what their mood would be after this are really expected unless you think about it a little bit harder, because they both felt neutral by the end. Okay, no surprise there. What's the issue? Why did the Robin Williams watchers turn neutral? If we really seek pleasure and avoid pain, there's no reason for them to become neutral. They could have just stayed happy. There's no reason to do that. If we really seek pleasure and avoid pain, we would need to stay pleasurable all the time. All the time, we would need to be happy. But that's not what's happening here. This study isn't very reliable. I don't know the sample size. It's out of date. Not very good. But what it does do is it questions our assumptions about, do we really seek pleasure and avoid pain? Or is that just an oversimplification? So I've just talked about the scientific, philosophical, impractical ways we can apply this concept. What about the practicalities, the examples, the ways that we can really act? Let's take communist Russia. This is kind of an extreme example, but I'll explain to you, okay? Okay, so half my family is starving, the other half is in a labor camp. I can't speak out against the government. If I do speak out against the government, I will be starving and put in a labor camp. I'm already starving, I'm not put in a labor camp, but my life is miserable. Here's the issue though. If you think about the positive here, I'm not working for a landlord. I'm not working under a capitalist system ruled by the bourgeoisie. I'm working for the state, and the state is helping me, whatever extent it can do that, right? And even though this issue of communist Russia is way more complicated than just optimism, you can see from this example how it can be really easily misused by powers like this in order to push their agenda. Let's take a much, much, much less extreme example. Burnt toast. Okay, I get that I was able to put my toast in the toaster. I was able to afford the toast, afford the electricity. I'm not a quadriplegic. I have 2 arms. I have 2 legs. The toast came out and something came out. But guess what? The toast is still burnt. I don't like burnt toast. I'm disappointed. Burnt toast is still burnt toast. Another issue, school. School is an amazing place where young people can learn how to be the best people they can be. And that's awesome. But you know what's not awesome? High stress levels, too much homework, sleep deprivation, bullying, ostracization, lack of individualization, competitive school culture, and the list goes on. There's so many issues with the American school system, and whenever I complain about them, do you know what people tell me? It's usually one of 2 things. The first thing is, well, look on the bright side. You got good teachers, you got good grades, you have good friends, nobody's bullying you. You should be happy. Think about the positive. That should be a red flag for you at this point. This is an issue because what they're doing is they're shutting you down. They're saying, these problems don't matter because we need to focus on the positive because the negative makes me uncomfortable and discomfort should be eliminated. We have already seen why this is an issue. Second thing that people will often tell me is, you're not accommodating to the system hard enough. You need to work harder. You need to make more friends. You need to put in the hours. You need to stop procrastinating. This is an issue. But the thing is that these problems still exist no matter what I do. And what you're doing by telling me that I have to change to accommodate a flawed system is what you're saying is that I don't want to change. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit back, be comfortable, and not take responsibility because responsibility makes me uncomfortable and discomfort should be eliminated. And so I'm just going to think about the positive because I don't want to change anything. Okay, last example. When I was in 5th grade, I saw The Wave. Some of you might have seen it, some of you haven't. I'm just going to explain it to you. It's a documentary-ish thing about a teacher from the 70s in California who was trying to teach his students about the Holocaust. He did it in a really unconventional way. He did this by setting up a club in the school called The Wave, and it mimicked a lot of the methodology of authoritarian Nazi Germany. Let's put on our think about the positive glasses to look at the situation. You have students finally doing well in school after years of struggling. You have students finally feeling like they're a part of something bigger. You have bullies stop and they start thinking about studies, and you have a student that becomes his teacher's bodyguard. And he helps his teacher because he's so grateful to be part of something bigger than himself. This is a huge positive. We see people that find purpose. We see people that find meaning, friends. This is huge. But let's take off those glasses for a second and look at all the sides of the situation. What about the authoritarianism, the lack of individuality, bullying outsiders? These are major issues. They're major flaws in the club. And they can't be solved by looking at the positive. This movie really traumatized me as a kid because I was way too young to watch it, so I really tried to justify it to myself as many ways as I can. So now you might be asking me, you've dismantled my entire worldview, so what are we going to do instead? Well, I'm going to say pessimism is just as bad as optimism. We cannot change the world by only looking at the negative and not looking at the things that we have to keep. We can't change the world by only looking at one part. We can only change the world by looking at all the parts. Realism. Realism is when we get rid of these 2 methodologies. We don't focus on the positive or focus on the negative or look at the positive or look at the negative. We look at everything. We look at the good, the bad, the top, the bottom, the light, the dark, everything in between, and we look at the glass and we see, is it really just half empty or just half full? And we look from the front and the back and up and down and all these other things, and you go onto a spaceship and look at it from 5D space and all these comic book stories, and then you see it's not just half empty or half full. It's both of them. So have a great day. Maybe not a happy one. Thank you.